It is 3:17 in the morning. The digital clock on your nightstand glows with a faint amber light in an otherwise heavily shadowed room. The house is completely silent, except for the one sound that is currently tearing right through your chest. Your 2-month-old baby is screaming. This is not the mild fussing of a hungry infant. This is a red-faced, full-body arching kind of scream that leaves their tiny throat completely raspy. You are doing exactly what you have been taught to do. You scoop them up off the mattress. You hold them tight against your chest. You start to bounce your knees in that familiar rhythmic sway while your mouth creates a continuous loud shushing sound. You walk laps around the nursery rug. Your mother-in-law is standing out in the hallway, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. She gently opens the door just a crack and whispers that maybe the baby is still hungry or maybe it is a terrible case of colic. You can feel her well-meaning anxiety radiating through the gap in the door, adding a heavy layer of guilt onto your already exhausted shoulders. You tell her everything is fine, but your heart is hammering against your ribs. You bounce a little faster. You shush a little louder. You rock them with more intensity, hoping to drown out the crying with your comfort. But something deeply frustrating happens. The more you try to soothe them, the harder they cry. Their tiny hands ball up into tight little fists. Their spine turns rigid like a small wooden board. You look down at their tear-streaked face, and a dark, terrifying thought crosses your mind. You wonder if you are doing this whole motherhood thing completely wrong. You wonder why your touch, which is supposed to be the safest place in the world, is somehow making things worse. I need you to take a very deep breath right now. Drop your shoulders. Release the tension in your jaw. You are not a bad mother. Your touch is not broken. Your baby is not rejecting you. The truth about this exact moment is going to turn everything you know about comforting a newborn completely upside down. Your baby is not crying louder because you are doing too little to help them. They are crying louder because you are doing entirely too much, and you are doing it way too fast. We need to talk about what is actually happening inside that tiny, beautiful head of theirs. When your baby was born, they left a perfectly temperature, controlled, completely dark, muffled environment. The womb was a sensory deprivation tank. Now they are out here in the world and their nervous system is incredibly raw. Imagine stepping out of a pitch-black, quiet room straight into a loud, chaotic rock concert with strobe lights flashing in your eyes. That is what a normal Tuesday evening feels like to a newborn. The human brain is a magnificent piece of biological machinery, but a newborn brain is essentially under heavy construction. The nerves in their brain lack a protective coating called myelin. Myelin acts like the rubber insulation around an electrical wire. It helps signals travel smoothly and filters out unnecessary noise. Because your baby does not have this insulation fully built up, yet every single sensation is experienced at maximum volume. A slight change in the room temperature feels freezing. The fabric of a washed onesie feels surprisingly rough. The sound of a dog barking 3 houses down sounds like a siren going off right next to their ear. By the time 3 in the morning rolls around, their little neurological cup is completely overflowing. They have hit a state of severe sensory overload. Their amygdala, which is the primitive alarm bell in the brain, has been pulled. Their tiny body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. They're in full fight-or-flight mode. Now let us look at your reaction through their perspective. When they start to cry from this overwhelming overload, you rush in to save them. You pick them up, which changes their equilibrium and spatial orientation. You start bouncing them up and down, which forces their brain to process complex movement. You start loudly shushing right next to their ear, which forces their brain to process a brand new, sharp audio frequency. You pat their back, which introduces a repetitive physical impact. You are doing all of this out of pure, desperate love. But to a baby whose brain is already drowning in sensory information, your frantic comforting feels like you are throwing buckets of water onto a person who is trying to stay afloat. You are accidentally giving an overstimulated brain even more data to process. This is the precise moment where the well-intentioned advice of Western parenting often fails us. We are conditioned to believe that when there is a problem, we must actively do something to fix it. We believe that stillness is the same thing as ignoring our child. Your pediatrician might have told you about the calming reflex and the 5S method, which involves swaddling, side, stomach position, shushing, swinging, and sucking. Those are wonderful tools, but there is a crucial step missing before you apply them. If you try to force those tools onto a brain that is actively short-circuiting, you will only get more resistance. The baby cannot process your comfort because the entry doors to their nervous system are jammed shut by panic. They are desperate for regulation, but they literally cannot find it in your frantic bouncing. They need to borrow your calm, but you do not have any calm left to lend them because you are panicking too. Let us look at a beautiful alternative that comes from centuries of quiet observation. In traditional Japanese parenting, there is a foundational belief that a baby is not an object to be fixed or managed. A baby is viewed as a highly perceptive, spiritual, and emotional extension of the parent. There is a concept known as the art of the pause. When a Japanese mother hears her baby begin to cry, she does not instantly spring out of her chair like a coiled spring. She doesn't throw open the blankets with a racing heartbeat. Instead, she pauses. She takes a breath for herself first. She allows the room to remain still for 5 seconds. This is not done out of coldness or neglect. It is done out of deep respect for the baby's autonomy and internal rhythm. She uses this brief pause to read the hidden signal beneath the crying. She is asking herself a silent question. Is my baby crying because they need something from the outside world? Or are they crying because the outside world is too heavy for them right now? If she determines that her baby is suffering from sensory overload, she uses a practice that feels almost magical in its simplicity. Imagine this scene in a quiet home. The baby is lying on a soft cotton futon mattress placed directly on top of the smooth tatami straw flooring. The windows are shaded. The ambient lighting is very low and soft. The baby begins to scream and turn their head from side to side, trying to escape the invisible weight of the day's memories. The mother walks over with slow, measured footsteps. She does not lift the baby into the air. She does not change their position. Instead, she drops down to her knees, sliding gracefully onto the floor until her face is completely level with her child. She does not say a word. She doesn't offer a single long explanation about how everything is all right. She simply takes her right hand, which is warm, heavy, and steady. She places it flat on the center of the baby's chest, right over their frantic little heart. She lets her hand rest there with just enough gentle pressure to communicate a solid, grounding physical presence. Then she closes her eyes and focuses entirely on her own biology. She intentionally slows her own breathing down. She breathes in deeply through her nose, counting to 4. She holds it for a brief second. Then she lets her breath flow out slowly through her mouth, counting to 6. She repeats this pattern over and over. She turns her own body into a living biological anchor. What happens next is an extraordinary dance of human physiology. It is a process that modern developmental psychologists call co-regulation. Your newborn baby has an autonomic nervous system that is completely incapable of self-soothing. They do not possess the internal wiring to calm their own racing heart rate down. They cannot lower their own skyrocketing blood pressure when panic sets in. They are completely dependent on the nervous system of an adult to do it for them. They are quite literally borrowing your peace of mind to heal their own body. When you pick a baby up and start bouncing them out of panic, their nervous system reads your fast heart rate, your shallow breathing, and the tight tension in your muscles. Even if your voice is sweet, their primitive brain reads your frantic body language as a confirmation of danger. Their brain says, "See, I knew there was a monster in this room because the big human is shaking and breathing fast too." But when the Japanese mother drops to her knees and places that heavy, still hand on the chest, everything shifts. The baby feels the absolute lack of movement. The baby hears nothing but the quiet, steady rhythm of a deep breath entering and leaving the mother's lungs. Through the skin of their chest, they can feel the slow, calm thud of the mother's heart rate. Because the mother's body is projecting absolute safety, the baby's amygdala slowly stands down from high alert. The frantic alarms begin to fade. The baby's heart rate begins to sync up with the mother's slow heartbeat like two grandfather clocks ticking in the same room. The tight little muscles in their back and legs begin to melt. The crying transitions from a sharp, desperate scream into a low, gentle whimper. And then, within a few minutes, the room returns to absolute stillness. This approach requires us to dismantle a very common modern misconception. We have been taught by modern culture that being a good parent means being hyper-responsive. We are told that if our child is distressed, we must supply an instant solution. We buy high-tech swings that mimic car rides. We play white noise machines at maximum volume. We bounce on giant exercise balls until our backs ache. We talk and talk and talk because we are terrified of the silence. We think that if we stop moving, we are failing them. But when your baby's brain is developing at lightning speed, it is collecting millions of data points every single second. Every color, every shadow, every distant car horn is a brick of information their brain has to categorize. By the time the night arrives, that brain doesn't need more input. It needs a sanctuary. It needs a void where nothing is expected of it. The pause is that sanctuary. When you choose to pause, you are not ignoring your child's distress. You are giving them something much rarer and more precious than a quick fix. You are giving them your full, unhurried presence. You are telling them through your stillness that you are strong enough to hold their big emotions without falling apart yourself. You are showing them that you are not afraid of their tears. When parents slow down, the entire room slows down. This simple truth holds incredible power. Think back to the immense societal pressure telling you that a good mother is one who always has a quiet baby. We internalize this heavy pressure until our self-worth is deeply tied to how fast we can make the crying stop. But your baby is not a machine with a convenient mute button. They are a tiny human being, learning how to exist in a very loud world. Let us go back to that dark nursery one last time. The mother-in-law is still standing out in the hallway, but you no longer feel the crushing weight of her silent judgment. You understand that you are communicating with your child on a deeply biological level. There will be nights when you have fed them and changed them and burped them and they are still crying. In those incredibly difficult moments, I want you to remember the art of the pause. I want you to place your baby down safely on their soft mattress. I want you to kneel down right beside them. Place your heavy, warm hand gently over their heart. Close your eyes. Breathe in deeply. Let your own nervous system become the steady anchor in the middle of their chaotic storm. You feel the rigid muscles in their tiny arms begin to relax. You feel the frantic heat of their skin start to cool down. You do not have to fix everything right away. Sometimes, the most profoundly healing thing you can do is simply stop rushing. Your quiet, unhurried presence speaks a million times louder than the most frantic rocking. It whispers directly to their primitive brain, telling them that they are entirely safe. It tells them that they are allowed to have a hard time and you will not abandon them. Every time you choose stillness over panic, you are laying down a crucial neural pathway in your baby's developing brain. You are teaching them the foundational psychological skill of emotional regulation. You are showing them how to find peace in a chaotic environment. And perhaps more importantly, you are giving yourself grace. You are letting go of the impossible expectation of maternal perfection. You are allowing yourself to just be a human alongside your tiny growing human. Let us take a moment to acknowledge the physical toll this journey takes on you. Your own body is completely exhausted. Your own nervous system is constantly scanning for threats and worrying about every little detail. By practicing the art of the pause, you are actually healing two nervous systems at the exact same time. You are giving yourself permission to step off the anxiety treadmill. You are claiming a rare moment of peace for your own racing heart. Love is not always about doing more and moving faster. Love is often about having the courage to do absolutely nothing but be fully present. So the next time it is 3 in the morning and the crying feels absolutely unbearable, remember that you have the power to change the atmosphere. You hold the frequency of peace right inside your own lungs. Breathe it in, share it gently with your child. Watch how the fascinating magic of co-regulation transforms your hardest nights into moments of profound connection. If you found comfort in this video and have ever felt completely exhausted at 3 in the morning, please share your story in the comments below. You are not alone in this beautiful and chaotic journey. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more gentle insights into your baby's developing mind. But wait, there is another mystery we urgently need to solve. You have mastered the art of calming them down. But what happens when you finally get them to sleep? You slowly lower them into the crib, and the exact second their back touches the mattress, their eyes snap wide open. Why does this happen every single time? In our next video, we will decode the hidden psychological trap of the arm sleep and why your baby's survival instinct treats the crib mattress like a dangerous threat. You definitely do not want to miss it.